Greetings. Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagenow, and we are back here in the Hendrickson Library at the Center for the Preservation of Western Civilization at ITR World Headquarters. You have John Hendrickson and myself here today to tell you all kinds of things you don't know, need to know, maybe already know, but we're gonna get through it today, John. And I did it right today. I pressed stop on the intro music, not stop on the recording. So we are rolling. This is going to be a great episode. I can tell.
Yeah.
Okay. So, been a lot going on in the last few days, and we've got the legislative session is underway. It's probably been something that we've covered in the past, but since it only comes around once a year, we can kind of hit on it again, but kind of tell folks what's going on, what to look for, and try and, I don't know, maybe a little bit of a look ahead as well. So yesterday was speeches from the legislative leaders. And so I want to spend some time today, John, talking about what they said, what they didn't say maybe, and what, if anything, we can glean from that. And a little bit about political messaging, because I think sometimes, look, as a former elected official, former legislative leader, I think sometimes we make this more difficult than it needs to be, or at least sometimes these officials do. So we'll get into some of that as well. Okay, so, and I'm going to try something that's a little bit different and a little bit difficult today, which is actually play some of these clips. So you've got the House Journal in front of you.
Yes. Yep.
Or a few pages.
Yeah.
So, John, what is the House Journal? I don't want to. I try really hard not to speak in lingo.
Yeah.
What exactly is the House Journal?
This is just the official proceedings of each day.
Yes.
That has the bills that are introduced, and then if there's a roll call vote, there's a vote on amendments or a rule, and so basically it's a would you say a diary of what goes on that day?
It's not. Yes,
I think House.
I think that's
or
fair.
The Senate.
Yeah, it's not going to have a transcript of what's said on the floor, but it is going to say, the House was called into session at 10:02 a.m. on Monday. It would say, I'm guessing, I don't think Speaker Grassley was actually gavelled in at that point to be the senior. It may have actually been, who would it have been? Segrist, Representative Segrist.
Okay.
The senior member.
Yeah.
I think you can pick whoever. But anyway, starts it off, gets it off. You go through all the things. So anyway, the Journal's going to reflect all that. One thing the reason you brought the Journal today is because when there are speeches prepared, they can be submitted to the Journal. And so these speeches from these legislative leaders was actually submitted to the Journal, so you can have the official written account of it. So, but we've got clips as well, and so we're going to play some of that. So this goes through, and this probably takes, I don't know, a half an hour, 45 minutes to go through this. The speeches aren't that long, but there's, appointing a committee to notify the governor that we're in session and ready to receive any communications that she wishes to transmit, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's all happening. It's a lot of pomp and circumstance. There isn't a lot that is actually handled there other than I think they certified the elections at some point yesterday. And so I am going to start with one of the last things that was done in the Senate. And I just want to get this out of the way just administratively, because I think it's important. I think it's important for folks to hear this, and then we'll dig in a little bit more into some of the tax policy substance.
The chair recognizes the senator from Polk, Senator Whitver.
Thank you, Madam President. I begin my speech today with a thank you to each person in this room and across the state who has taken time for their day to say a prayer for me, offer a kind word, or support me and my family as I continue to battle this brain tumor. The news recently has been encouraging. The tumor is getting smaller. I still have a long ways to go before the tumor is behind me, but I will continue to battle it with everything I have. I appreciate your continued prayers and support as I keep walking down this path. My wife Rachel, my kids Ella, Elin and Drew, and my mother-in-law, Doe. They're all here as well, and I thank them for their love and support over a very difficult year.
Okay, that was my good friend, Senate Majority Leader Jack Whitver, talking about what he's been through over the last year. As I think most of our listeners know, Jack got some of the most difficult medical diagnoses that you could get, and is not only beating the odds, but doing it. It's been frankly inspirational. And here he is back, not only beating, he's got a long ways to go, as he say, not only beating this tumor, but standing there on opening day of session and leading his caucus again.
Yes, absolutely.
And boy, that's tough, because I believe that, and we've talked about this, John, Leader Whitver has a great deal of responsibility to play in everything that has been done in the state of Iowa over the last few years. He's been a tremendous leader and has helped us get a great deal of the conservative agenda passed.
Yeah, he's been a pillar of the conservative movement in Iowa.
So, yes, long may it continue. Happy to have Leader Whitver back. I'm going to go back now, and then this is a little bit later. And you know what? We're going to come back around to Leader Whitver. I don't want to do all that right away. But anyway, just happy to be able to play that for everyone today. Okay, let's go to the other chamber now, because these both happen at the same time. You've got Senate gavels in, House gavels in. They kind of do this, at the same time. So this is going to be Speaker Grassley's comments, who I'm really excited about where he's at on property taxes this year. He is even leading up to session said they want to be bold. I don't want to put too many words in it, but has not just status quo, which is exactly the kind of language that we want to hear out of legislative leaders. So I'm going to play this from Speaker Grassley.
Iowans have been begging us to shift our focus to property taxes. There will likely be multiple ideas brought forward this session on the best way to address property taxes. For anyone who is interested in delivering real solutions and not just trying to kill everyone else's ideas, I'm all ears. We will do our due diligence and consider each other's ideas. As we do this, I will encourage the Chamber to prioritize one thing: put the shift in priority back on the side of the taxpayer and not from the taxing entities at the local level.
Thoughts on that, John?
That's very good. I mean, 2 points that stand out from that part of his speech. One is, it's clear that, as the speaker said, that property tax was a main issue that Republicans heard about in this past election cycle, and this is something they know they want to address this session. And the second issue, which I think is very important, is that he said he wants to make sure that the taxpayer is at the heart of any reform.
Yep.
And I think that's very important, because what we've seen in the last few weeks in the media is basically all the focus has been on local governments and basically what's going to happen to them, and mm-hmm. Everyone, they're always saying, well, we need to be at the table, but taxpayers never at the table. And what the speaker is saying, it's time for the taxpayer to be at the table in this discussion.
Yep. I want you to keep that in mind. I'm going to come back around to that point a little bit after we get through some of the speeches, because I think there's something really important through that I want to explore. I think that's right. It's keeping the focus on the taxpayer, which frankly is what this organization was founded and does, is try to have the taxpayer have a seat at the table. We'll come back around to it. The cities, the counties, the other voices in the property tax debate are certainly going to have their voices heard. We know that.
Let's not forget that they also have lobbyists, and the taxpayers don't.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's certainly there as well. Okay. So really excited about that. And you know what? Speaker Grassley didn't even commit to a certain recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
He may have some ideas in mind.
Yeah.
And it goes to show you that you don't have to have a completely well thought out plan to speak positively about what you want to do. And that's what he did right there. Okay, I want to come now. We're going to go across the rotunda again. We're going to back over to the Senate, and I want to hear from Senate President Amy Sinclair.
Our rainy day funds are full. We have $1.9 billion in carry forward funds. And over the last 8 years, we've enacted multiple tax cuts to help Iowans keep more of their money in their own pockets. As a result, we've been rated as the number 6 best state and number 3 state for opportunity by U.S. News and World Report. Letting Iowans choose how to spend their money has resulted in robust growth, fueling Iowa's successful economy. It's common sense to let people choose how best to invest in themselves, and I look forward to continuing the work on reducing property taxes for Iowans to continue their investments this session.
All right. President Sinclair. I thought she lays out what we've done pretty well and the why.
Yeah. And I was glad she said that, because I've seen in the last few days stories in the media once again highly critical of Republican fiscal policies, basically saying that the state of Iowa is running into a fiscal crisis because of the tax cuts, and because we have the flat tax at 3.8%. And Senator Sinclair is absolutely right. Our fiscal foundation is very strong, mm-hmm. and it's not. We're not in a deficit situation, and so I think she was very wise to point that out.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I think is very troublesome, and I'm actually working on an article on this that'll be forthcoming, but it's sort of an updated version. But we keep hearing that the only reason why Iowa's in such a good shape right now is because of the federal money that came from Joe Biden, and that's just simply not true.
No. And
we've talked about that before. So I think what Senator Sinclair said was absolutely true. I mean, Iowa's in a good financial foundation. The tax cuts have been responsible. We've been able to afford them because of prudent budgeting. That's because of this legislature and Governor Reynolds.
A reminder that these surpluses that we have, and she talks about the Taxpayer Relief Fund and ending fund balances, those are all overpayment of taxes by Iowa taxpayers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not money that's been shifted around because of federal. That's an overpayment by Iowa taxpayers.
That's right. Yeah.
And the foundation for these tax cuts that we have done to try and right-size that.
Yes.
So very good point. And a mention about where they want to go on property taxes next. Okay. Finally, at least as far as these clips, I've got Leader Whitver again, who talks a little bit about where we've come, but I think this is pretty good stuff too. And hopefully,
a year ago, I stood at this desk and compared the policies in Iowa to those in Minnesota. Little did I know at the time, but Vice President Kamala Harris would select Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her running mate, and the entire country would have the opportunity to choose between these contrasting visions. After several months of campaigning and the now famous $1 billion spent pushing the big spending, high tax, radical left agenda, the results couldn't be more clear. Nearly every county in the country shifted more conservative in its vote for president. 4 years of inflation, open borders, and radical leftist policies were rejected in every corner of the country. The verdict issued by Iowans and Americans leaves no doubt about what direction they want government to take. My message to Iowans is this: we heard you, and we're going to keep doing what we have been doing. We will address the rising cost of living, continue cutting taxes, build new career opportunities, and ensure we all have a safe community to call home. It's the first day of the 91st General Assembly. It's time to get to work doing the will of the people. And as I noted, the will of the people is clear. Thank you.
Okay, so you got to enjoy that.
Yes,
the Tim Walz comment.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
yeah.
So
Well, he's absolutely right. I mean, it was this election was about two visions of government. It wasn't just about two different political parties. It was two drastic visions of government where to take this country. And we can just look at Governor Reynolds versus Governor Walz and just see absolutely two visions of where to take each of the states. And there's a lot of similarities between Iowa and Minnesota, but if you look at the policies, they're just completely different. And one thing I noticed between the remarks by the Speaker, the remarks by Senator Sinclair, and by Majority Leader Whitver, Senator Sinclair referred to common sense policies, and both Leader Whitver and Speaker Grassley referred to the, in a sense, the mandate that Iowans gave to both at the national level with electing President Trump and re-electing Republicans in a landslide at the state level, and basically saying that, people agree with the conservative agenda.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. And look at Minnesota's record. These liberals throughout Iowa are saying that we're in a fiscal crisis because of the tax cuts. But look at they praise Minnesota, but the fiscal forecast for Minnesota came out a week or so ago, and not only did they blow an $18 billion budget surplus, but because of Walz's policies, they're now facing a $5 billion deficit coming up. And so does that tax and spend policy work? It certainly doesn't.
Yeah.
Iowa's not facing a $5 billion deficit.
No.
We have $4 billion in the Taxpayer Relief Fund.
Yep.
Plus full reserves.
Yep. And the priority needs of government have been accounted for.
Yes. Yeah.
For the next several years to come with the resources available to us. So that's all exactly right. I think what's encouraging is hearing all of these leaders, at least as far as Grassley, Whitver, and Sinclair go, really speaking to, like you said, John, what Iowans expect. Look, they elected super majorities back to the legislature. I mean, clearly Iowans want more of that kind of leadership. Clearly they have rejected that liberal the liberal agenda, as Leader Whitver said. But specifically, I don't want to drive down a little bit of this on property taxes, John, is that, and this is where Speaker Grassley hit on it, this is a priority. And we talked about this before, that the folks that were out knocking on doors in this campaign heard about it, and they heard about it loud and clear. And a lot of these legislative campaigns were litigated on the issue of property taxes. And so they have to do something because people are mad. We saw in our ITR Foundation poll, our idea is a 2% hard spending cap. Well, almost 70% of Iowans support that.
Yep.
And so they've got the message right on this because this is where they need to be at. What's been a little frustrating is sometimes, I think we kind of talked about this in the front end, we're too quick, leaders, to talk about all the conversations we're going to have, and we're going to bring everybody together, and we're going to talk to stakeholders, and we're going to make sure that everybody's voice. Oh, okay, fine. None of that is incorrect. But what's the message? Mm-hmm. The folks that really stood up and gave you these big majorities, what do they want to hear? Now, the minority party might want to hear about all of your caution, all of the high-mindedness. But the people that sent you there want to hear about, are you going to fix my problem? There is a problem. Property taxes are too high in Iowa, and I'd like to hear about how you're going to fix it. These leaders did that. Now, that hasn't always been the case. And sometimes, to be fair, you don't want to pick too much out of what you hear in the media because they cherry pick lines, and it might not be fair. But do you see what I'm saying, John? And I don't expect everyone to be a messaging expert. You get to do it in long form through articles.
Yeah.
and I just kind of mouth off here on the podcast, but it shouldn't be that difficult.
Yeah.
Problem, solution. Problem is property taxes are too high. I get you. I hear you. We're going to try and fix it. Don't tell me about that inside the building stuff. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about it. Everybody's sitting, all of that nonsense. So anyway, I had to get that off of my mind.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, that is, it was a mandate. I mean, this election was a mandate for property tax reform. I mean, that was a message that was sent loud and clear.
Yeah.
And people want something done, so you're 100% right on that.
Yeah. And look, I having been time in the building, you should have the back channel conversations in the back of the room and keep the lines. All of that stuff is fine. You should do that. But the message that you're delivering is that we're going to keep going.
Yeah.
And okay, I'm sorry. I got to get one other thought. Sometimes I feel like some of these Republican legislators keep their foot on the brakes in how they speak. They ultimately are going to vote for some really strong conservative legislation. They're going to vote for generational tax cuts or universal school choice or voter ID or collective bargaining reform or whatever it may be. They're going to vote for that. But somehow this idea that if I sound really measured and reserved in my comments that the other side's not going to dislike me as much. No, they're really mad at you either way. So you might as well just go ahead and talk to the folks that sent you there.
Yeah. And I think sometimes the point on conversation and having everyone at the table is just can be a ploy to stop something. And and then we've seen this in the past with especially with property tax and we've seen this where we have to have a conversation, or we have to have the word I'm just get so tired about is dialogue.
Oh yeah.
We have to have a dialogue on this, and nothing gets done.
Yeah.
And so we've already seen cities saying, well, we need to hold off because we need to let the reforms settle and the only in the past these conversations take place, but I've been in some of these conversations and I've seen where the taxpayers have tried to speak up in some of these meetings, and they've been silenced by local officials.
Oh yeah, we learned that loud and clear during the budget hearings at the local level last year.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how many people show up or how persuasive they are. They're not backing up.
Yeah. And I just
they're not even an effort to trim 1 cent out of that budget.
Yeah.
Once they've decided what it is.
And I just saw before coming up here, there was an article on the Register just about activists complaining about the loss of climate funds.
Yeah.
And but would they report that about taxpayers on about property wanting property tax relief?
Yeah.
I mean,
if 10 people show up at a Des Moines City Council meeting and complain about bus service, that's going to lead the 6 o'clock news.
Yeah.
Front page of the paper. You get 20 or 30 taxpayers to show up and saying, "Hey, I'm tapped out. I don't want to pay anymore." But who cares?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so, and I want to get into this too. One thing that I did not expect to hear out of any of these speeches, it wasn't there. I didn't expect for it to be there, is them to say, you know what? I love ITR's idea of a 2% hard spending cap. Let's do that. None of them said that.
No.
I didn't expect any of them to say that.
Yeah.
I hope they pick it up. I think they should pick it up. But what they said is they understand and they're going to work on the problem. Great. That's what I wanted to hear. And because it's our job to say, we think that you could achieve, and it could be workable to a 2% hard spending cap. Great. Well, the cities, on the other hand, are all mad at us.
Yes, yeah.
The counties are mad because we don't understand. I mean, it was hinted at in a recent article that we don't understand rollback. Give me a break. You want to ask county assessors how we feel about rollback? We've been one of the most vocal in sticking up for it as a good taxpayer protection.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, we get it. We understand the process. And so great, let's keep that. But these are all the way they deflect. They want to come at us. You know what? It is our job to set the edge on behalf of the taxpayer. I'm not quite sure whose job it is to set the edge on behalf of government. Maybe it's the League of Cities. Maybe it's the Iowa Association of Counties. I don't know. But don't come at me, don't come at us upset because we're not somehow trying to find the middle ground with you guys. That's the legislature's job.
Yes, yeah.
We will come out with our idea because we are the voice of the taxpayer. We're not the voice of rotunda dialogue with the League of Cities and Iowa. So that's not who we are.
Yeah.
We were founded and funded to stick up for the Iowa taxpayer, and that is exactly what we're going to do. Now, the legislature now can take that and figure out how they want it. I still think they ought to do 2%. Don't get me wrong. But that's their job. You don't have to be mad at us for that's our role in the process.
Yeah.
Take it to the legislature. And a lot of this stuff you're hearing, this is all the beginnings and tactics of how to kill bills. And you should remind me, John, because I want to get into this in another episode, like the art of killing bills at the Capitol.
Yeah.
Because it's actually a lot of fun. And all this is just straight out of the playbook.
Mm-hmm.
They're in there. They're going to try and confuse and delay and criticize and scare all their way into running out the clock so that we don't get very much done. But I cannot stress enough, it is not our job to try and craft policies that make the other side of the debate happy. It is the legislature's job to work through all of that. And after hearing some of these comments today, or frankly from yesterday's record this, I am more encouraged that they are going to be, especially as Speaker Grassley said, listening to the taxpayers, not the legion of taxpayer-funded lobbyists on behalf of government.
That's right, yeah. That was encouraging.
So
that was a strong comment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good. I feel better now. You and I are going up to the Capitol later.
Yeah.
We're going to go up and hear the governor and what she has to say. So that's day 2 in the evening.
Yeah, and she'll be giving her condition of the state address and setting the agenda for her priorities for this session. And so I'm looking forward to hearing that.
Yep. And as I said with regard to these legislative leaders and my expectations, I'd like for her to say something strong on property taxes. Mm-hmm. And I do not expect her to lay out a clearly defined idea of where we'd like to go.
Yeah.
This isn't like the income taxes, which is we're going to go from 3.9 to 3.8. Well, okay, that's easy to articulate and easy to understand. Property taxes is more complicated. There's a lot more moving parts. I look forward to hopefully hearing some positive comments on a commitment to working on that. It'll be fun. So, you excited?
I am, yeah. And I was doing some research right after lunch on the 2% cap. And as we've talked about before, New York has a 2% property tax cap, and theirs is 2% or the rate of inflation, whichever is less. And it's actually was supported and defended by the arch conservative governor. I'm just joking on that former Governor Cuomo, who actually made it permanent, their property tax cap. And so New York, which is not known as a bastion of as a red conservative state, has a 2% property tax cap, and looking at that, their experience, the cities, the counties, the different levels of local government are all saying the same thing that we're seeing here in response. But the results from New York is it has saved taxpayers dollars, and it's not depriving their localities of vital services. Yep. And so I think if a liberal governor like Cuomo can support it, it can't be that bad. Yeah.
Well, and I mentioned the ITR Foundation poll with 70% of Iowans supporting the 2% hard cap. That's over half of Democrats. This is an issue that cuts across the political spectrum. The Iowans are frustrated with their property tax burden. So it's a good issue to score political points on, but even more importantly, it's a good issue to do because it's the right thing for Iowans. So
could I just do one more point? I just want to, this was from Speaker Grassley, and that's, if I can read it because the font is small, but he was referring to this about the election, and I just thought this was great, and this is from his speech. He says, our opposition, referring to the Democratic Party, did all they could to dismiss these concerns from voters. This is the Republican agenda. They chalked them up as racist, sexist, or any kind of phobic you can think of. Our bills were characterized as an attack, hateful and divisive. But the reality is that while these issues are emotional, they've turned out to be more unifying than they than they were divisive. I really thought that was good.
That's a smart
Yeah.
take.
Yeah.
I completely agree.
Yeah, I really thought that was good. And then just one other point I wanted to bring up is, he has this federal and other funds committee. I'll be kind of interesting about that in terms of federalism and how Iowa can maybe better use federal funds and maybe track them. So I'll be interested in how that plays out this session.
We're going to be talking about this this year, the session, John, and the direction, whether it goes through that committee or however else those ideas can get talked about. But you're exactly right. And we touched on this in an earlier episode, but there may be new opportunities with a new administration to change the dynamic of how states work with the federal government. So that's exciting too, because we believe in federalism. All right. Well, that's good, John. We've got a lot of work to do. We're going to head up to the Capitol here in a little while, and hopefully back with a report on that coming up very soon. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for being a part of the ITR Live podcast. Thanks for being an active taxpayer, for those of you that are out there being one of the ones that's expecting change. So with all of that, we will see you next time on ITR Live.